All right, so the first question I wanted to ask you was what made you decide to live life on your own terms and become an independent consultant?
I love that question because I actually wrote a blog on that when I made my transition. So like a lot of people are experiencing these days, I was actually laid off. My company had done some reorganization and they went in a totally different direction. And for whatever reason, they decided they no longer needed coaches. So it was me and two of my colleagues. And I decided at that time, the way it had been done and a lot of the corporate toxicity that I had seen in other organizations as a consultant on the side, was that I didn't want to have to go through the process of interviewing, getting the job, assimilating, and explaining why the ideas that I had and the approaches that I wanted to implement were a good idea, especially since that's what a company was paying me to do. So as I explained it to my mom, I use it as the path of least resistance for my soul. I decided that I really wanted to work with organizations that believed in the importance of focusing on people, especially during change management. And so that was the catalyst. I wanted to make sure that I chose the clients that I wanted to work with because we believed in the same thing about people and the value of people and the importance of getting people involved, especially when it comes to change management.
Mhm. That's so important, and of course, it's a new transition for everybody looking to do that, especially when it may not be totally expected. So, what
Mhm.
was your transition like with the whole thing? Were there aspects that you found difficult along the way, or something that really excited you?
Initially, my transition was pretty smooth because I was still a faculty member for UC San Diego. They had a program called Elevate, and it was a professional development certificate series. So I was still doing that. I was also doing some diversity and inclusion training for MGM Resorts and for Southern California Edison International, as well as working with a boutique firm in Orange County. So everything was still humming along. I was still doing quite well for my first year. And then when those engagements stopped, it was, what am I going to do? Did I make the right decision? Did I hear correctly?
Right.
Is this really the path for me? And so, what was tough about that transition was, first of all, as a coach, having to actually walk the talk and eat my own words, such as, do not confuse who you are with what you do. I always say that to my clients because if you should find yourself between engagements, then all of a sudden your title is gone and you almost feel like you no longer exist. And I
Mhm.
went through that myself. And I think that was necessary for me as a coach to really understand that you can say these things to people, people can agree with these things, they can go through the steps, but there's a lot of internal processing that is just not that easy to deal with sometimes. And even though I knew that in my head based on all the professionals that I had coached previously,
Mhm.
I had to come to terms with that myself.
Mhm.
And so what I discovered was I really had to decouple who I was from my title. And the
Mhm.
fact that I no longer had a title did not mean that I was no longer important, that I no longer existed. And that was a huge epiphany for me. So I think that's very, very valuable for me now as a coach to
Mhm.
really help people work through that.